And a good morning to you.
Good morning, and good morning to your listeners as well.
In fact, if there's any group of people who use cement in very high quantities, it is your association. First, let me ask what this means to you, listening to that story and the announcement in the increase of the cost of cement.
Well, it's a difficult situation for us. Cement increment has become like it's competing with the way petrol prices also are going up recently, and it doesn't order well for us. Cement is one of the basic materials that is required for any construction project, and so when it is hit by such astronomical increment, it throws operations out of gear and doesn't order well for the industry. But if we may go back a bit, this crisis of cement issue came about around 2010, sorry, 2020, towards the December, when COVID had just hit us within that year. And towards the end of December, we were buying cement around 38 Ghana cedis then. And then the first week of January or so, then it shot up to 42, then 40, 46, then 49, then 55, then 60 or for 55. And now we are hearing that it's going to go up around 68 or 69, which means that the usual 1 cedi, 2 cedi increment that we used to experience shot up to 5 cedi increment, and now it is hitting 9, 10 cedi increment. This is just too much. This is just too much. I mean, if you are having a project, this is the argument and the narration I normally give to the public that if you are in a housing project and you start and your project is taking you a year to complete, and you start buying cement at 40 cedi and finish that project at 65 cedi, how do you expect me to price my house? This is the challenge. And so sometimes we, the estate developers, the normal way we are able to manage some of this astronomical inflation and fluctuation is to hedge or peg our prices in the dollar, so that at least it helps us a bit. Government of Ghana too says that don't do that. And so I don't know whether this is an attempt to collapse these businesses or it's supposed to help us. So we are in a dilemma. It's a difficult challenge for the industry. And if we continue like this, the possibility is that a lot of us are going to close up, or we are going to cut down on production, and the repercussions of this is going to be very enormous on the economy in general.
But from listening to you, it seems you have been confronting these price increases for a while. What have you had to do to perhaps deal with the cost?
I think, to be fair to the system and to the cement production companies, you must all understand that as businesses, you can only document your cost, and after that, you add your margin for profit and overhead. And so, if you are saddled with any cost that you cannot have any control over, it's definitely not your fault. And so, it must be ascertained. But if you remember, when COVID started, the issue of price increment was based on several reasons, as the manufacturers would tell us. First, they said international prices had gone up because COVID has closed some of the companies that were producing the major raw material, which is clinker. And so prices had gone up. Then we also heard at that time, there was a bit of exchange rate differences, but it was not as huge as we are experiencing now. Then the next thing they were also complaining about was free charge. That free charge had gone up by 300%. So if you were importing goods and you were paying 100 cedis for those goods, it had gone up to 300 cedis to import those goods. So those were the things, and then a few challenges that they were having at the harbor with regards to how the materials come in and how they take them out from the harbor. They were saying there were some delays that were also giving them some cost. So we had a discussion. The Ghana Chamber of Construction Industry, which GREDA is a member, had interaction with the select committee in Parliament on this issue in the presence of all the parties, including the cement manufacturers themselves. And we brought all this before our leaders and pointed out the indicators that were confronting us and creating this problem. All the assurances we were given, we will look into it, we'll see what we can do. I think the cement manufacturers at a point confirmed that something had been done about the challenges they had at the harbor. So I think they got some respite for that. But beyond that, nothing anymore. We haven't heard anything. All we keep hearing is cement has gone up, cement has gone up, cement has gone up. And this is no other well. So if there are challenges that has to do with international prices, that is an external force. We may not have too much to do about the external force, which has to do with the international price tag. But what about the things that we can handle internally, which has to do with taxes on the importation on those goods? What have we done about it? So I kept telling and arguing that, for example, if there are taxes, I'm not sure of the full component of the taxes on the importation though, but I was saying that if there is any component of tax on cement, which is a percentage of the cost of the product, these are the areas that we think that government should look at and remove those percentages and maybe put a little flat rate there so that it can give us a bit of respite. But nothing is happening. So indirectly, if I import cement and it is 100 cedis and government tax component is 10%, and government was getting 10 cedis out of my import, because the price has now gone to 150 or 200, government is indirectly also benefiting from the difference in international cost. So can't we look at those taxes and remove some of those things that are can be removed? It's not permanent. We all agree that government needs taxes to run the economy. But what is the point in collecting taxes and collapsing companies? The repercussions is more than what government can handle. So do something to help sustain the businesses so that at least business can sustain, business can keep employment, business can employment can give revenue to the people, and the people can take care of their family. But if we don't do something in this area and we continue to slap cost, and just look on, the end result is that the taxes will not be coming in the first place because companies are going to wind up or they are going to fold up. And the repercussions, as I've already explained, is that people will lose their jobs and their families will also not have any to feed on. So it is time that government looks at this thing seriously and look at what is important at this crucial moment and try and put some measures in place. We are in a country where we wake up every morning, it's all about bad news about increment, news about that, news about hardship, news about this. We are not getting any feed from our leaders that is comforting and suggest to us that we are being given some relief under the circumstance. It is all about increment here, increment there, increment here, increment there. I don't know whether we cannot do anything about some of these things. And it doesn't order well for industry at all. So, I must be frank with you.
So you are seeing little action from government, and you think best move is to offer temporary tax reprieves?
Yes, it's one of the means by which you can help industry to sustain. It happens everywhere in most parts of the world. When situation become unbearable for industry, government can take off some of these taxes and it's temporary. We are not saying that take it off for good, but give the industry some respite, give them some comfort, let them feel that you appreciate what they are going through and you are working with them to see how best they can sustain, instead of looking on and getting to the point where some of them become unbearable and the end result is what I'm saying, they be pulled up.
You deal with real estate developers constantly. Are you seeing the situation where some of your members are packing up or have decided to take capital of real estate development and perhaps try something else?
We don't have any study to back it, but obviously since the COVID beginning of COVID up to now, there are so many dynamics that are taking place. Some have either reduced production, some have readjusted their operations, and it's possible a few of them. I know one or two people who have actually said that no, they are going out of this business and they are moving into some other ventures because they think it doesn't look good going forward. But I think this one cuts across. It may probably not even be the real estate industry alone when it comes to the issue of COVID. But when it comes to the international price effect, building materials is one of the commodities that have been heavily affected because we don't have the capacity. Ghana has not industrialized its space enough to produce our inputs, and so we rely heavily on importation, especially iron rod and this cement business. Cement consists of clinker, and clinker alone constitutes about 90 to 95% of the product cost cement. And this clinker, we don't have it in this country. The only part of Ghana we have clinker is somewhere in the northern savannah area, and the quantity they get from there, I don't think can even feed the savannah cement factory there. And so it is just woefully inadequate for us to have them locally. And so we are heavily dependent on importation. That is where the problem is.
And before I come to ask some questions on what that means to somebody who would attempt to buy a house, I also realize you spoke largely about government fixation on the collection of taxes and adding more. But do you also not understand the difficulty government finds itself in? As we speak, there have been 2 downgradings. That makes it difficult for government to raise some money. And the major talking point from those institutions is the fact that government may not be raising enough to pay off some of the debt it owes.
I agree with you, but I think there are suggestions out there. I'm not an economic guru, but if you listen to radio and TV discussions on somehow the economy can be managed well, there are several suggestions from other professionals and people in this space who are offering very laudable suggestions, but it looks like government is not listening. In most cases, it's not listening. But I give you a scenario, which is better. Killing companies and causing the job losses and getting citizens not to have revenue to feed themselves, getting all these 3 phases affecting your economy, which is better? Are you not better off reducing taxes and sustaining businesses so people can have revenue and feed themselves? But if you continue to slap taxes and the companies run down, then where are you going to collect the tax from in the first place? That is my simple question. If you continue to slap taxes on the companies and they collapse, where will you collect the tax from? That is my simple question. If you have an answer for me, I'll really appreciate it.
Well, I also like to draw, because whilst we are talking about cement, inflation is now at 31.7. So what that means is that cement may not be the only thing that you are buying much more expensively.
Exactly.
What other stuff is costing, or there's nothing that the price has not? Is there something that the price has not gone up?
Almost everything has gone up. But as I explained to you, cement and iron rods, they are the 2 major components when it comes to construction and real estate. Very, very critical. These 2 are the heaviest costs you may incur. As for finishing, I always say that it's a choice. If you are building a property and you decide to make it functional, when I say functional, make it possible to live in and provide the basic importance of what accommodation should do, which has to do with shelter, then you are saddled with the major material, which is the cement and iron rod that brings that product to bear. Then it's a problem. But when it comes to finishing, like tile, electrical gadgets, and all those things, I think it's a choice. You can decide to postpone having a luxury building, but a functional building is a requirement, and you need it. And if iron rods and cement are the basic things you need to get that functional structure in place and call it accommodation, then we have a problem.
And I'm guessing then there's the matter, because if you are building to sell, of course you are building to a particular taste. Yeah. So you may not even have the choice of functionality. You have to build something that can be bought.
I have to tell you, see, some of the developers have even brought some innovation into what they are doing these days. Some of them are these days having products where they don't fully develop without the buyer. So they try, because of the same reason, rising cost of materials, have these strategies where they call it shell and core. They try to provide the basic structure in place, put the structure in place, put in the walls, do the plastering, and other things, and then wait for buyers to surface, and then they discuss the modalities of what kind of finishing they have to put to the house. That is some strategy some of the developers are applying right now. So I agree with you. As a real estate developer, the end result of your project, your product, is very critical to your will-be target buyers, and so it would have been prudent and nice if you had finished it to some standard and then sold it. But under the circumstance, you have to be very careful going that way if you want to sustain.
And what is happening in terms of if I try to buy a house nowadays? I'm guessing it will be much more expensive than it was in 2020.
Yes, exactly so. You know, in the past, because we knew or we were very much aware of the inflation and the fluctuations when it comes to the dollar to the exchange rate, most of us had pegged or indexed our prices to the dollar. So when you want to buy and you come, because the price is in dollar, we sell it to you at that price. And so if I started my project in January and my building is costing me $100,000, it stays the same throughout the year. And so if exchange rate goes up, it is the same thing. You, the buyer, will have to make up the difference, the exchange rate, and then come. But you know, Bank of Ghana regulation is also telling us that we should stop that arrangement. And so we cannot price our products in dollars anymore. We have to be doing that. But for me, there's not much I can do except to have my calculator by me when you call me and you ask me about my price. It's indexed to the dollar, so I give you the price that morning. If it says the price stays the same for a week or two, then thank God we keep the figure and then we do the business. But as soon as there's an exchange rate difference and you have not done your payment, then you are started to find a difference. Even that one.
So your prices change as fast as the exchange rate.
Yes. Even that one, the challenge here is that most people don't come and pay off immediately. They pay off by installments. You understand? So it is even difficult how to capture the figures in the contract. Because if Bank of Ghana says that don't price your building in dollar, if you capture the figure in dollar in your contract, you might be breaking the rule. And so subsequent payment, unless you have a gentleman agreement with this buyer who understands and appreciates the system and knows that that is the only way to go for it, you have a problem in having people who are paying by installment. So in fact, the problem is a big one. It's a big one. And if we don't find solutions to this, it's going to affect the business significantly. Thank God, yesterday, I wasn't part of that meeting anyway, but the Ghana Chamber of Construction Industry, which GREDA is a member, had a meeting with the governor of Bank of Ghana. I wasn't part of the meeting, so I can't tell what exactly the outcome was. I think they left the meeting around 6 o'clock in the evening. I'm here to get a brief, but my president, the GREDA president, was part of that meeting, and I'm sure before noon, I'll get a brief on what exactly happened, because he articulated that difficulty of operating in the real estate space with this CD fluctuation, which is really, really a difficult one for
us. I'm wondering if you are getting lots of buildings finished, which have been sitting with no interest shown in them for years.
Yes, it is. I mean, sometimes you drive around, you realize that there are a lot of houses that have been built, and finding buyers is a challenge. But that is a marketing issue, which we will leave that to the real estate developers to find a way to deal with it. But a lot of it has to do with affordability. A lot of it has to do with affordability. Some people think that the private real estate developers are deliberately overcharging, but it's not overcharging. Look, if I take you through the challenges that real estate developers go through, for which they are not able to meet the affordability threshold for many of our citizens, you will marvel. I mean, land issue alone, I'm sure you are very much aware of how people will have to buy land and rebuy it, repay for it 2-3 times before they finally own it. Then when you are borrowing money, you go to the financial market to borrow money for your project. You are borrowing over 24%. Even now, the interest rate has gone even higher. Far from that. And then when you don't have the money to buy as well, and the buyer is also coming. He doesn't have money. He goes to see the mortgage company. They also adding another percentage of 24 and above before a buyer can access funding to come and pay for the houses that we build. So the whole system is a difficult one, and we must commend companies that are still operating and are still finding ways and means to assist in increasing the housing stock of the country. And then you come to government attempts to provide affordable housing initiatives. What has happened to all of them is because the same challenges that I've been talking to you about, government itself is unable to deal with it, and creating all sorts of problems here and there, and most of those affordable housing initiatives never get completed. And as for that one, it's a whole topic on its own. That if you are interested, you have to book time to deal with it.
Well, Mr. Amegayibor, thank you very much for speaking to us this morning.
Thank you very much.
He is Executive Secretary, Ghana Real Estate Developers Association, Mr. Samuel Amegayibor. That association is called simply GREDA. And we've been speaking to them on the issue of cement prices. Afrewa.